precipitation of a brittle phase on the grain boundary. Brittle phases can be deposited on grain boundaries of steel through improper tempering. Remember, though it was not part of the original course, but we gave you a couple of slides reminding you of the heat treatment operations of hardening, quenching, tempering, annealing, and so on, right? So tempering. Tempered martensite embrittlement results from tempering near 350 Celsius. Again, if you go to your material science and your phase diagrams for steels, iron carbide diagram, then martensite is a phase that forms on steels when you do not have equilibrium cooling, right? When you have sudden quenching from very high temperatures to suddenly very low temperatures, then a very hard phase called martensite is formed. Otherwise, if you remember in steel, when you have molten steel and then you cool it, but cooling happens on a good slow pace and it is equilibrium cooling, then the phases are delta ferrite, austenite, and alpha ferrite. Martensite forms when from high temperature you suddenly quench by you suddenly dip into cold water or cold oil and so on, right? So if you have martensite and it becomes brittle, embrittlement, right? So when you do tempering near 350, this happens. Temper embrittlement occurs when an alloy steel is tempered around 550 Celsius. So these are two examples. Now both involve segregation of impurities such as phosphorus and sulfur to prior austenite grain boundaries. Understand, right, that in the steel that we are making, there are very small amounts, sometimes called even trace amounts, say of phosphorus and sulfur. Mainly it is iron and carbon, but some phosphorus and some sulfur is there. But during these operations, some impurities like phosphorus and sulfur, they segregate, they come out of the solid solution and near the austenite grain boundary. Now segregation of aluminum nitride particles on grain boundaries during solidification is a common embrittlement mechanism in cast steels. Cast steels, you know, right, steels that are made by casting. You sometimes give it a name of cast iron and so on. So aluminum nitride, now this is an intermetallic, right? We have talked about intermetallics, aluminum nitride, and these particles can also come out of the solid solution and they are then on the grain boundaries. Aluminum nitride, if present in sufficient quantity, can also contribute to degradation of toughness resulting from temper embrittlement in wrought alloys. Wrought alloys, remember, if you do cold working, you see, you work and the past tense is wrought in English, normal English. So cold worked means wrought alloys, right? So you can say cold worked alloys or wrought alloys. So here there is a lot of information which requires a quick review in your mind of your earlier material science and so on, right? The martensite phase, the word called embrittlement, that by some mechanism you increase the brittleness of the material, right? And then that there is some phosphorus and sulfur, sometimes it segregates, it comes out of the solution, solid solution. Aluminum nitride can do that. And in all of these doings, the material is rendered more brittle, and therefore the failure is more of a brittle nature in this case. The second mechanism is environmental assisted cracking. The name is very obvious, right? I always ask you that if you look at the words and you know the general meaning, right? So environmental cracking can occur in a range of material or environment combinations, right? When the environment around you assists cracking. In some cases, crack propagation is directly due to corrosion reaction at the crack tip, right? So material at the crack tip selectively corrodes. So corrosion, of course, we know is because of a chemical environment. isn't it? In other cases, crack propagation is due to hydrogen embrittlement. We perhaps have mentioned it in passing earlier in some lecture that when hydrogen is a very, very small material, right? And when very fine grains are added, the strength is increased, and of course, with strength, hardness is also increased. So when hydrogen penetrates into a metal, the metal is embrittled, it becomes brittle. And it is a very common problem in oil and gas industry, especially in sour environments. So you have pipes which are transferring petroleum products, right? Petrol, oil, gas, this, that. And then some of the hydrogen from hydrogen sulfide gases and so on starts to attack the steel, and the steel of the pipe becomes more brittle, and cracks and failures are possible, right? So I'm just mentioning that it is there. So in one case there is corrosion, that is an environment problem. In the other case it is hydrogen embrittlement, and again the environment must have some hydrogen there. In both cases, high stresses at the crack tip promote crack propagation. More detail of these are given in chapter 11 for a higher course or a secondary course in fracture. Here in the next figure, intergranular fracture surface in a steel weld that was in contact with an ammonia environment, right? So we are showing a welding on steel material, but because in the environment there was some ammonia, so it is again environmental assisted cracking, right? So if there is any environment, any type of water vapor there, any type of chemicals there, gases there, and a combination of temperatures together with them, then it promotes this type of cracking, which is environmental assisted. So here, if you see, the grains are there, but if you see, there is a sort of a fog, over the grains. So because the steel was in an ammonia tank, right, so the ammonia kept on attacking it, and then the cracks happened on the grain boundaries. The cracks, if you see, cracks are happening on the grain boundaries. So so this is one very real example, an SEM micrograph. Let us now see the third mechanism. It is called intergranular corrosion, right? Now we have already talked of corrosion under environmental assisted cracking, right? So corrosion can happen due to the environment, which is chemical in nature, but that does not happen of this particular type, that is general corrosion. Here there is a preferential attack of the grain boundaries. It is different from general corrosion, where material is dissolved relatively uniformly across the surface. It is different from environmental assisted cracking because the applied stress is not necessary for grain boundary corrosion. So you see, right? So intergranular corrosion is a corrosion that preferably happens only along the grain boundaries, and general corrosion, right? Not here. General corrosion is very general, where there is a dissolving of all the material everywhere on the surface, right, because of corrosion. That is general corrosion. And environmental assisted cracking is there, which needs some applied stress together with the environment. So, right, so grain boundary corrosion is just grain boundary corrosion, corrosion that happens on the grain boundaries, The last one of the mechanisms for this type of failure, intergranular failure, is grain boundary cavitation and cracking at higher temperatures, right? Again, you need to remind yourself of the word cavitation. You have done basic physics and chemistry many times. You know that when a metal is attacked or something is attacked and there is a bubble formed somewhere, and that bubble bursts inwards right, then that type of thing is called cavitation. So in corrosion, there is general corrosion all over the surface. In cavitation and pitting, there is corrosion only on specific points and so on, right? So that is the thing. And you, again, as I said, that many of these things you have done in earlier courses, so you are just reminded. At high temperatures, grain boundaries are weak relative to the matrix. This we know. Significant portion of creep deformation, high temperatures, creep deformation is accommodated by the grain boundary sliding. So if creep is happening, then a large amount of the creep is because of sliding of the grain boundaries, because grain boundaries are weaker compared to the general material. We know that we have done in earlier material science, that if you see the grains are the main material. Grain boundaries are the boundaries between the grains. So they are sort of spaces, and any crack, any space is a weak position. So when you were in the chapter on microscopic level defects, then grain boundaries and dislocations and so on. So grain boundaries are weaker, right? Now, void nucleation and growth, formation of voids and then growth of void at second phase particles is therefore concentrated at the crack boundaries, and cracks form as grain boundary cavities grow and coalesce. So what is happening in certain materials, when the temperature is high, creep deformation is of course happening, because, and this creep is happening to a large extent because of grain boundary sliding. Grain boundaries are weaker than the rest of the material. And then at inclusions, right, second phase particles and so on. Now they are points, right? It is not that they are everywhere. Grain boundaries are there, but here or here or here on the grain boundary there is second phase particle. So on those second phase particles, cavitation will happen. Cavitation will happen, right? Implosion, bursting inwards, and then those cracks will be formed, and then they will start to grow and form. So these are the mechanisms of the last type of failure, intergranular failure. Okay. Let us do an example now and try to really pay attention. And again, as I say, that if you can do this example yourself without looking into the solution, then it is good. You can go back to any of the equations or any of the previous things that we have covered in this chapter and try to do it yourself. And if you succeed, then it is great. If you do not wholly succeed, but you have really tried it, then at least when you come to see the solution, then you can compare where you were weaker and so on. And if you understood it very well, then it is a strengthened that yes, this is the method. So an aluminum alloy fails by micro void coalescence when the average void size reaches 10 times the initial value. Initial value of voids and 10 times now. If the voids grow according to equation 511 with yield strength replaced by equivalent stress, one measures equivalent stress, plot the equivalent plastic strain at failure versus mean stress upon equivalent for mean stress upon equivalent ranging from 0 to 2.5. Assume the triaxiality ratio remains constant during deformation of a given sample. So, right. So, try to do this. I mean, you can do some Excel values, create some general values, try to create whatever graph, and then compare your solution with the solution that will be discussed shortly.